welcome to today's Virtual Fellow Forum. We'll be getting started just in a minute or so.
Staring at my fears, trying all my tears away. I'm not gonna be afraid. Ho, ho, ho.
All right, welcome to today's Virtual Fellow Forum. I'm actually going to just reshare my screen to make sure you can see my window. Give me just a moment. I heard the window is a little bit small. All right, I hope that you're seeing this in full screen now, but if you're not, I'm sure you'll let me know in the chat box. All right, so for today's agenda, we're going to start off with an icebreaker on digital jigsaw puzzles and then continue with the presentation on simple strategies to get beginners talking in the virtual classroom. And I think you'll see that this is not only applicable to beginners, but will be great for intermediate level students as well. And then that'll be followed by the optional Q&A session with the admin team. So today, we're really glad to welcome Erin Vanacore. She's a virtual English language fellow in Mexico. So Erin, you may begin sharing your screen.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I hope that you guys had a nice holiday week or vacation if you got one. And like Andrew said, my name is Erin Vanacore, and I am a virtual English language fellow in Mexico. And just to start off, I just want to launch a quick poll, see how everyone's doing today on Monday afternoon or Monday evening, wherever you are. I'm reading, we're in the chat where everybody's logging in from. And I usually start a similar poll, but with more options for my conversation clubs online with beginners. And I change them up, and I always have one option that says something like nervous, because I know that a lot of students somehow feel very pressured to talk in a second or third language on Zoom. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds. It looks like about everyone, about 80% have responded. So as people are responding to that poll, we are going to start off with a digital jigsaw puzzle, like Andrew said. So I'm just going to end the polling in about 5 more seconds. It looks like 1 more person has to respond. 2, 1. All right. Great. I'm happy to report most people are feeling pretty good and some are a little tired, to be expected. All right. So I do a jigsaw puzzle with my students often. They seem to enjoy it, and I think for a few different reasons. One, it's low affect, so it gets people excited. It's a game. It's not a lot of pressure. They don't have to talk right away. It's a good warm up. And also, sometimes I have students who log on late, so it's okay. They're not missing much, for example. So these are the directions, and I always do put up a screen that is very similar to this, and I have them repeat with me. So I'm just going to read out loud. So the first thing you're going to do is click on the link. I'll send it in the chat. The second thing, once you join the game, you're going to write your name. It will prompt you to do so. The third thing is to work together to solve the digital jigsaw puzzle. And I will explain why that's so important in the virtual classroom. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do so. And last but not least, make sure you have fun. Like I said, this is just something to kind of get the class warmed up. It's no pressure here at all. So since we have a large group today, if your last name, and I'll write this in the chat. So if your last name begins with an A through an M, you are going to click on this first link that I just sent through the chat. And if your last name begins with N through Z, you are going to click on this second link that is coming in a few seconds. And I will then share my screen and let everyone know what it looks like. So if your last name, one more time, is N to Z, like mine, end of the alphabet, you're going to click on that second link. And if your computer, I'm sorry, Susie, won't allow you to access the link, don't fret. I'm going to share my screen and you could kind of watch along with everybody. So let me just go back here. And I will join on the second link because that is essentially my last name is a V. So here we go. So here it is up top. And for everyone who can't join the actual jigsaw puzzle, you can follow along with me. So I'm going to join the game. All right. So I'm with Adrian, Zach, Teresa, Lara, Rose, and Andrew. Excellent. And for those of you who are unable to do so, I am just going to showcase a couple of features that help you solve this puzzle. So the first thing that you want to note is that if you come over here, this is going to give you essentially what the puzzle should look like. This little button that has the image symbol with the mountain peaks in the background. So I will hover over this for my group or for anybody who is following along on Zoom. That's the completed puzzle. So that's what we are looking to complete. And like I said, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. Don't worry if you don't complete it. But the second piece of advice, besides hovering over that image, is that we try to go for borders, right? That seems to be the easiest way to solve the puzzle. So when I do these digital jigsaw puzzles, I like to select images that have a little text in them. Again, my conversation clubs are beginners, and I will get into, you know, those groups a little bit more after we do our icebreaker here. But generally speaking, when we do this kind of icebreaker, you know what, let me add the links again in the chat because I think some people just joined. Okay, and some people are coming in again. All right, so if you are just joining, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Erin Vanacore, and I'm a virtual English language fellow in Mexico. And we're gonna start with this icebreaker here. So no problem. So if your last name begins N to Z and you're just logging in, please click on that link. And let's see if your last name, like Nicole is just logging in, is between A to M, you're going to click on this link. So feel free to join your teams. Nice, nice Teresa, nice Lara. Every time you hear that little kind of ring, it's somebody else is joining the game. So I think we might have more people whose last names are in the front half of the alphabet. That's quite all right. I think that when groups are between 10 and 15 people, possibly a little more, it's good to work on one digital jigsaw puzzle. So we have about 2 more minutes left. 2 more minutes. Let's see. Oh, A to M is finished already. Oh my goodness. Wow. All right, let me check. When I saw somebody say finished, I didn't know what that meant. So thank you. Amy, that was fast. Let's see how many people you guys have. Okay. Wow. Looks like the puzzle is already, the game was completed at 1:09. Excellent. Okay, so here it is. Great. I'm just going to center this a little bit. So since you guys are finished over here in 2 minutes flat, that is good. I'm going to return to my presentation, and no pressure for the second half of the alphabet there. I knew we had fewer players there. All right. So like I said, this was meant to be a fun little warm up, and you can continue working on that. You guys had a great team, right? Oh, you finished a long time ago, as Stella says. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you hanging. So let's continue on here. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit right now. These are 2 quotes that I love. Basically, the first one, language is power. That's kind of my motto as a teacher, as an English to speakers of other languages teacher. James Paul G is a researcher. And the second one is a quote that I love from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And a little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's of arts in international affairs and Spanish language and literature, and my master's in TESOL from University of Southern California. I have an extension in gifted and talented education, and I really see language learning through the lens of differentiation. So as far as content goes, I like kind of combining language and content, but again, everybody's at different levels. So I try really hard to make my lessons based on students' readiness levels or interests. And I actually am a middle school teacher as well. I'll just throw that in there. So as I introduce my fellowship, my project, I wanted to know what your opinion is. And since you're here to learn about getting beginners talking, what do you think is a strength that beginner English language learners bring to the virtual classroom? And what is a potential challenge? So please write your answers in the chat. I'll give you about a minute or 2 to answer. And while you're thinking about that and writing your response, I'm going to introduce my project in Mexico. So I live outside of New York City in southern Westchester County, right by the Bronx. And my project takes place at a teacher training college called Escuela Normal de las Huastecas in Huejutla, Mexico, which is an area northeast of Mexico City. The languages spoken there are Spanish, and there's also an indigenous population who speaks Nahuatl. It's spelled Nahuatl with the L at the end. So for some of my students in the conversation clubs, they're learning English as a second or potentially third language. The area doesn't have a lot of authentic opportunity to practice English, so it can be a little bit of a challenge for them to see, why should I learn English necessarily? So these are my roles. I facilitate conversation clubs and model teaching methods for pre-service teachers. And they're at the A1 and A2 levels, and that's the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. I also lead direct language instruction and speaking practice for teacher educators who are also beginners. And then I organize professional development sessions and strategize planning with the English Language Academy faculty. And they are fully bilingual in English and Spanish. And their level technically is at the C1 level. So a quick story. Before I started this project, I was told that in particular, the teacher educators would be very resistant to learning English. So that's basically this group right here that I'm talking about. That they didn't want to do it, that they are career professionals, they're educators, and there's no need for them to do so. And like I said, the word that was repeatedly used was resistant. So as you can imagine, I was really nervous about it and going into this just thinking like, well, what's the point? Why did this teacher training college sign up for this kind of a program? And so I tried from the get-go, knowing that they really didn't speak a lot of English, knowing that they had no authentic need for it in their lives. As soon as we start our lessons, I have them repeat everything that I have on my screen, from the objective to the date to the numbered lists that I make. And I use the annotation tools quite a bit. And I found that they actually loved it. So even things like this, I would just say, let's go, repeat, facilitate conversation clubs, and they would all read with me. And I still continue to do that today for all of my groups, in fact. But the best thing about working with the teacher educators is that they kind of see this as like something fun. It's really no pressure for them, but they really do enjoy these groups. And I've incorporated more games because it's a good opportunity for them and a good experience. Okay, so I'm just going to go through briefly some of what people are writing. So Natasha said a challenge is limited knowledge of technology. Yep. Leticia said wildly varying levels of proficiency. Correct. Absolutely. They always want a translation, says Estella. Sometimes they're unmotivated, says Caroline. Unclear motivation. Draper agrees. Yep. Let's see if there's any. Rose says personal experiences. Yes. A strength, exactly. Celine agrees with experiences. Maybe engagement is a challenge again. Natasha says they bring cultural background and information. Curiosity, says Brian. Yeah, these are a lot of exactly some of the things that I find myself. So before we continue, I want to go back to our digital jigsaw puzzles here. And let's go to the first group. And I'm going to ask you to unmute yourselves. Why do you think I chose this puzzle? Why this image?
Oh, hi. This is Draper speaking. It may have to do with the kind of content, the cultural content, which could be, I guess, relatable or interesting to the students that you teach.
Awesome. Thank you, Draper. Anyone else?
They're blossoming too, I guess, you know, and they're in the way that a flower does as they learn and grow.
Thank you, Nicole. So maybe the image, the flowers, the plants growing. How about one more?
Language on it.
I'm sorry, Christina, go ahead.
There's language on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything jump out at you in particular, Christina? Which language or words?
Well, I don't know what to say. The Spanish words are big, but the English words are smaller. But they have things. They have the pronouns in there. You and I. A lot.
Yeah. And I'm just going to bounce over to the second group. If anybody would like to add to this, and it doesn't have to be somebody from the second group. Same question, but it looks like there's one missing puzzle piece. Here we go. Yeah, true teamwork. Yeah, so here's another one over here. Any ideas or any similarities from the first puzzle?
There were two things that struck out to me. One was the immense amount of vivid color, and that really attracts people, the color. And then the second was the word trust and how it belongs into the actual dialogue, that we're trying to encourage our students to not only speak, but trust in themselves to be able to speak English as well as the others around them. So those were two things I got out of it.
That's awesome, Rose. Thank you so much. And Marisol, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
I think it has something to do with the pandemic. It looks like a lot of themes related to the pandemic.
Interesting. Can you expand a little bit, expound upon that?
Well, you have the teacher on the right with all the books, the family and the parents with the student on the left.
Oh,
And it looks like there's a distance between them. And then the main word, trust. And then we did, so meaning we still learned.
awesome. I love these interpretations. And how about one more? Caroline, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I think it looks like it's from the same storybook as the previous one. And so I like the continuation of the imagery of the mother wearing the feathery, dress or skirt or bottom, and the English, as far as language goes, the words are very easy, and the phrase and the vocabulary is very easy to understand.
Definitely. And you are correct. This is from the same book. I'm going to put the name in the chat and the author. This is an author who's Mexican. Her name is Yudi Morales, and she has a really interesting story of immigration to the United States. The book is called Dreamers, and it's also written in Spanish, Soñadores. And I do love this particular two-page spread for there's the code switching, amor, love, amor, or translanguaging. I think this is just kind of bilingualism, right? And that's what we're trying to encourage. But this was a little homage to my host country of Mexico. But I agree with everybody. And Rose was mentioning the colors, the images. There's a lot of things to grasp onto here, especially for beginners. So the vocabulary, I think that Caroline was mentioning too, not only in the words, but in the images. So people would be able to talk about certain things, for example, like plants or books or butterfly, colors. There's kind of an entry point for anyone with these. And for those students that might be a little more intermediate or potentially advanced, they might be able to pull off of, use some of the actual words here to discuss something. If you have groups who are a little bit more advanced, I think you would be able to ask, different questions about potentially, the vocabulary or something a little more, like I said, advanced. For my groups with beginners, we often then go with the visual thinking strategy, see, think, wonder. And as they are talking, they're kind of learning from each other, which is another aspect of this that I really like. It's a peer-to-peer connection, not so much me telling them or modeling, but then I do model for them. So if somebody might say plant, I might write in the chat, let's make a sentence, I see a plant. And then I'll type it in using the text feature here on the annotate function over Zoom. And then we kind of build simple language, simple grammatical structures from there. So I find that this is a really great way to increase background knowledge and build vocabulary while making meaning together. It's a little bit more of a community type of activity, I guess, which can be hard to develop over Zoom, in a virtual classroom. So the objective today, and nice job, everybody. I have to give you a round of applause for completing both of those, especially the first group in 2 minutes flat. So our objective today is to design speaking activities for beginner English language learners in the virtual classroom. But again, please feel free to think about how you might be able to adapt some of these for your classes and your particular teaching contexts. So the first thing that we are going to go over a little bit more in detail is how to create a digital jigsaw puzzle. So in the chat, I'll put down this, the website for you, and yes, they can, Carissa. So Carissa was asking, can students access this on their smartphones or tablets? And they can. I actually have a lot of students that log in on their phones. Like I'll see them, they'll be outside or, and so they're kind of doing it on their phones, and they do have to just click on the link and it will take them there. The other thing that's nice about this is that it's free. So it's easy to use for everybody. So in the chat, I just put the link, and if you want to, you can just follow along with me, or you can do it as I'm talking. But I'm going to go over 4 specific features here. The first one is the search feature of how to find pre-made puzzles, just using their images from their website. The second one is browsing their puzzles by category. The third one is how to make a custom puzzle, which is what I just did with you. So I used the image URL and I'll walk through that with you. It's very self-explanatory. And to keep in mind that we need to use the multiplayer mode so that everyone can play together. And again, we're trying to increase the sense of community here. So we want to make sure that that's turned on. So this is what this website looks like when you first get here. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of features. And like I said, feel free to do this on your own and just listen as I'm doing it. But if you scroll to the bottom here, we are going to get to this, where the search box essentially. So it's right over here. And I am going to ask someone here to kind of mention something that might be coming up that you might be asked to teach about. So for example, I know that my host institution is very interested in customs and celebrations and holidays in the United States. So I don't know if you share that same ask, but what is something that's coming up in the, I guess, on the calendar that we might be asked to teach about?
Earth
So,
Day.
and I'm sorry?
Earth Day.
Earth Day, awesome. So I am going to search here first for Earth Day, okay? So let's see what pops up. And sometimes we have to play around a little bit. So, and that's quite all right, because you might not like what you see. Okay, so I just typed in Earth Day, and here I have a picture of the globe, okay? And then it pops right into Father's Day, Labor Day. So my search didn't really produce what I'm looking for. So what else can I use? Instead of Earth Day, since that's somewhat confusing, any other ideas? We're gonna try to find an image for Earth Day.
Environment.
Environment, okay, let's try that, thank you. So here we go again. And you can see the date here. This is from 2011. So it looks like some of these are pretty old. So my search isn't really fruitful, like I said before. So I am going to do a Google search. So here we go. And this is often what I end up doing because I don't love some of the images that they have, but it's okay. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. And I'll just show you with a couple of extra steps how you can find the image that you might prefer. Okay, so just for the sake of time, I am going to just look for something that has, like I said, some text. And this one has quite a lot of text, but I kind of like it. So I'm going to right click. And this is what you have to do to make your own custom puzzle. We're going to go down here to the URL. Let's see if I could find it. Copy image link. So does everybody see where I'm kind of highlighted there? And I'm just going to click on that. So I'm getting this link here. Now I'm going to go back to my Jigsaw Explorer homepage. And I'm going to go down again past search puzzles. And what I'm going to do is create a custom puzzle. So that's this one right in here. So I'm just going to pause for a quick second and make sure everybody is with me. Does anybody have any questions before I continue? Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel, I just saw what you said, Ramadan. Okay, cool. Sports, folklore, yeah, all of these things are here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on create a custom puzzle. And now I have my image URL copied, and that's where I'm going to put it right here. So I'm just going to paste it in there. Let's see if this actually is going to work. Let me double check here. That's not correct. Go back to my image. Okay. Copy. Okay, hold on. Sorry, guys. Let me just double check. I have one that has a JPEG. Copy image link. Let's see here. Let me open this up.
Do you have to save it first as a JPEG and then copy the link?
You can do that. And I know that there should be something, here it is, copy image link. Sorry, it should be this one. So maybe you have to just open it up more, but you absolutely can. And you can download it, which sometimes I do. But I should be able to just put it in like this. And this is good for you to see, to be honest with you, because you might have to, it's a little trial and error, but that's what you want at the end here, the PNG or JPEG, something like that. So I'm just going to go back and walk through the steps that I did again. So once this was small, I did have to click on it. And then once the image was a little bit larger, I right clicked and went down to copy image link. So I hope that clarifies things. And then we're going to paste that in here, and I'm just going to click enter. So here we go. This is what's going to turn into this short link here. And you want to make sure that it's in multiplayer mode. So I'm going to click try it. And this is how you make it more interactive. Now you can see there's a ton of pieces here. I would never put this many pieces. So how you change that is you're going to come right over here, and it pops up, choose the number of puzzle pieces. So I'm going to click on that. Can everybody see on the left-hand column all the different options that you have? Yes. So I generally do something between 50 and 66, and sometimes the numbers are slightly different, but I think somewhere, 50, 60 is a good amount for about a 5-minute puzzle. So I'll just go ahead and click on 60. And now in order to make this a multiplayer puzzle, you click on the 2 people there. Multiplayer mode will pop up. Click on that. And now your game link is ready to be created. And this is the link after you click create game link that you want to copy. So that's the link that you are going to copy and share with your students. So again, we just went through how to make a custom puzzle, how to change the number of pieces, and also how to put it into multiplayer mode. So before I move on to show you how they have things categorized on their website, are there any questions at this stage of how to get, choosing your own image?
So after you have created a puzzle, will it save it on the site for other people to use or no?
It will save until it is solved.
Oh, so you're not adding to the bank of puzzles then?
No, I don't even have like a membership or anything. There's no way to kind of go in and then say like, oh, to say, oh, I've done this puzzle before. You kind of have to add the link, the image link each time you want to do it. So that's actually a great point and a good question that you bring up, because that is a benefit to using their pre-made puzzles, because you don't have to go through these extra steps. I just find that, for example, when we were looking up Earth Day, we didn't find anything that we liked. So going through, a little extra work in the beginning to find an image that might be more appropriate for your theme of your lesson or your objective of the lesson is a little beneficial in my opinion. But the next way to find puzzles, and you can see here, they have featured puzzles, mystery puzzle on Friday, and they have new puzzles every day. But the other place that I think is a great spot to look is right over here where it says browse the puzzles. And this is going to pull up different categories. And for me, especially with, teaching in the English as a foreign language context, like we all do, I get asked to teach about like food or, life on the farm, stuff like that. So I can easily come over here, especially if I don't have time or don't want to make a custom puzzle, and I could pull something up here. So here's, for example, farms, they have a bunch of different options, and you could easily just use something that's here. So this is kind of the website in a nutshell. I did want to mention, and I think this is a really cool feature, especially for people who maybe do more advanced lessons or different content, contexts that you teach in. There is a way to put, and they have an example on their website here of how to make this as part of an escape room, a digital escape room, which I think is really cool. So part of that would be to complete a digital jigsaw puzzle as one of the steps to get out of the digital escape room. So that is this website. And William says, so you also can't reuse puzzles. You can from their website, like you can use this puzzle as many times as you want. as many times, like over and over, but I was just talking more about saving a puzzle and then trying to go back to it with other people. If it's a new group, I would just relaunch the puzzle. Yeah. All right. So I did want to share a couple of examples from my classroom, my virtual classroom. But before we get there, I just wanted to say it obviously makes the most sense if you're connecting your puzzle, especially if it's in the beginning as like a little warm up or an icebreaker, to whatever you're going to be teaching about that day. So like I said, these are some topics that I get asked to talk about from my host institution. So it's very easy to choose something that fits well or connects well to the jigsaw puzzle. I think it also works very well when you're talking about culture in the United States, celebrations, events, holidays. And finally, tying in any kind of grammar or building vocabulary. And again, it's a great activity because it is kind of creating a sense of community amongst everybody. And there is that peer-to-peer element as opposed to just the teacher modeling or telling everybody what to do. But that is how I approach error correction. So as we're looking at the image and we're talking about it, I might repeat back the correct way to say it. And then I also model it in the chat. So I think that ways that I've used it is to make a collaborative list of vocabulary about the image from students. It's a great way to model simple sentences. And again, you can make that an expanded sentence, whatever you're practicing. I think it's a good platform to use. And like I said, I often use the see, think, wonder visual thinking strategy off of that. And it's a great preview for more speaking practice. And I will share an example of how I use first the digital jigsaw puzzle, and then second, a structured dialogue. So here are some examples from my classroom. Like I mentioned, cultural celebrations. This was a group of pre-service teachers right around Thanksgiving. And just a quick little anecdote, they know a lot of words that are sometimes, just food related, but things that came up from this particular image, and I use this directly from their website, was, I was surprised that they knew what cranberries were. Like they offered that up when I said, okay, what do you see? And somebody in all of my classes knew what cranberries were, but what I didn't expect is to talk about things like a gravy boat. So I thought that was, kind of amusing for me as a teacher. I was surprised, like I said, that they knew what cranberries were. I would think that's, I don't know, just not a word that I would imagine beginner students to know. So yes, they probably have studied Thanksgiving vocabulary before, but like I said, gravy boat, didn't think about that. Again, we talked about just recently, actually, St. Patrick's Day. So this is an example of, you could see how I kind of use the chat. I'm constantly chatting with them, and then simple sentences using the annotation tool with arrows, going over simple grammar like sheep, it's not sheeps. And also a couple of means two. So for me, this works a little bit easier. It's a little more seamless to do grammar like this than other ways, but whatever works most for you. This was an example, again, from December with vocabulary around wintertime and talking about, different things like hot chocolate and bottles, cup and mug, two synonyms, but I might use mug because this is a hot drink, stuff like that. And again, another example of how I am fanatical about the annotation tools here. And then from the digital jigsaw puzzle, I often put the picture in a second slide and then practice a structured dialogue. So I find with beginners, when there is some choice here, but they know what they are expected to say. And I think that it's very helpful to have two different colors in the word bubbles. I know it seems a little silly, but then it's to basically show that two different people are going to be talking. And I do then do a round robin, and this kind of takes some time to get them into the routine of doing this, but it's expected that everybody talks. And so after you do this once or twice, people are nervous, but they know, okay, I'm going to warm up and I know I'm hearing my peers do it. And I often start with somebody who's a little more confident speaking English. So, and I write down on my attendance list, I'll do a dot next to everybody's name to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak in it on their own. So as we're doing choral repetition throughout the entire lesson, this is an opportunity for people to be heard individually. So I actually wanted to just do this with maybe 3 very brave volunteers here. So if I can have somebody just start to model how we might do this round robin, you are going to start with the yellow bubble and fill in the blank over here with the list that was generated by the students, and then call on somebody to answer. So if I can ask somebody to be a brave volunteer, I would be forever grateful. I think I see Nicole's hand up.
How many hot chocolate are there?
And now you have to call on somebody.
Yes. William.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was using the space bar. There are 2 hot chocolate. No
Excellent.
S.
No S there. Yeah, so we could say there are 2 hot chocolates. How many hot chocolates are there? And William, can you try one more person, please, in the yellow bubble?
I'm not sure what you're asking me to do.
Can you read in the yellow bubble, please?
Oh, okay. How many candy are there?
And call on somebody else, please. I have 2 people, let's see that raised their hand.
I'm not seeing any hands, but
How
how about Marisol?
Hi, there are many candies.
Thank you, yes. And I would correct them here and say, we're gonna change this to how many candies are there? There are many candies. And obviously this takes a much longer time. And we also, I teach into the numbers, right? 2 can also be a couple of, 3, maybe a little bit more, or a few, and 5 plus many a lot. And you can see my hands are always in the air, apparently, something I learned about myself. I cheer a lot. Here's another example of another structured dialogue that we did, again, about food. I think it kind of works very easily. What do you eat for breakfast? For breakfast, I eat. And this was lent itself to talking about the difference between eating and drinking. So we obviously don't eat coffee, and you can see in the chat, that's what somebody said. For breakfast, I eat coffee and soup. So that would be a moment to teach into and correct that. So if it's a liquid, we're gonna drink it, although we might say eat soup, right? So it's just different things that kind of come up, and you can address them however you feel best. And this was also just a basic example of using cognates and, again, highlighting tool on the annotation feature of Zoom and the arrows. I'm always seeming to really do that to emphasize what I'm asking of students. Okay, and before we hop into breakout rooms, a couple of suggestions is, you can see I use numbered lists quite often. I think that helps with beginners to keep things organized. I think that with my slides, I try to keep them as easy to understand and clear as possible, and I emphasize directions. I think it's helpful to teach into that. So even if you think back to the jigsaw puzzle slide, there were numbers on the side and the directions were very easy to follow, and hopefully trying to, ward off any confusion. I like to use the call out shapes to signal speaking. So that yellow bubble and then the blue bubble, I changed the colors to say that this is supposed to be 2 different people talking. I use choral repetition from the get-go. So if I were teaching with my beginner conversation clubs, I would be saying suggestions, repeat, suggestions. And I try to model the word at least 3 times if I can. And I do find that structured dialogue practice with round robin, like our brave volunteers just modeled, going back and forth, does give everyone an opportunity to talk and be heard, and also create somewhat of a collaborative classroom community on Zoom. And finally, as you can see, I really like to use the annotation on Zoom, especially when people are a little confused. I might stick my arrow up and say, here, 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 you know? So highlighting the text feature and circling things. So before we head into breakout rooms, I would be happy to answer any questions, either in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. And as we're seeing if anybody has questions, this is what we are going to be talking about in our breakout room. So how does this apply to your teaching? So think about how can you encourage more conversation and talk in your virtual lesson plans. And again, I mostly teach beginners, but you may not. So how would these strategies work for you? So Luma asked, can we use annotation in Google Classroom? As long as your Zoom browser is open, yes. Well, while you are all thinking about this, I'm just going to ask one last poll. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now. And again, the polls are totally anonymous. So I'm just curious to see if anything here could be potentially useful for you in your virtual classrooms. I know it can be extremely difficult and challenging to teach like this, especially when we're expected to try to get people to speak in another language on the computer on Zoom. So, you know, I hope some of these ideas could potentially be helpful for everybody. But, you know, I always would love to hear what other people do as well. But thank you guys so much. It was so nice being here.
Thank you.
All right, so we are all ready for breakout rooms, and we have our question on the slide. So please stick around for breakout rooms. Here we go.
Just like to thank you so much for coming today to give your presentation. Personally, I really like how you start. I really like how you began with jigsaw puzzles and then expanded on it and tied it together so clearly. So I hope everyone else felt the same way about today's presentation as well. And we hope you'll also join us for the next Virtual Fellow Forum, which will be in 2 weeks on April 19th. And that is 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember, Eastern Time. And we'll be welcoming Carrie Zahn. She's a Virtual Fellow in Morocco. We also hope you'll consider joining us online on April 29th for the online event, Publishing in the TESOL Field, Insights and Tips from Alumni, and we'll have a full panel on that event. And then Wednesday, May 12th, this is part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series presentation, Exploring and Expressing Culture and Identity Through Project-Based Learning with Dr. Ramin Yazdan Panah. And he's an excellent speaker and great at leading discussion as well. So we hope you'll consider joining for that. Your feedback matters as always. I think Emily's probably just now or already has posted the link in the chat box. So we just ask that if you have a free minute or two, please complete the event survey. It'll also be emailed to you after the event, and we do take your feedback into consideration. All right, it's time for Q&A with Lara.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Neely. I am the manager for the fellow team, and right now, just as Andrew said, the Q&A time. So if you have any administrative questions related to your virtual fellow project, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll be happy to try and answer the question for you.
So one question I have is about the stipend and ideas for how to use it.
The stipend or PAA?
The stipend. I
So
think
the stipend is what you're receiving, your funds for being paid for what you're doing for the contact hours. The PAA, which is the program activities allowance, is the reimbursable $250, which each
okay.
It's not that you get this money.
Yeah, that's
but,
it.
You make purchases with your RELO approval, and then you can be reimbursed for it. The number one item that we see that virtual fellows are using is a Zoom subscription. So I'd say probably 90% of our virtual fellows have a Zoom subscription, which they just write to their RELO for approval. Once their RELO approves, they send it to their coordinator and once a month with an expense report to be reimbursed for their monthly Zoom subscription. We've also seen a few other types of subscriptions based on what the needs are of your project. And that would be something determined between your host institution and RELO. Also, maybe just some type of equipment if it's necessary, a light or headset. So a few items like that we've seen. Other than that, it's really kind of talking with your RELO and host institution and seeing what their needs are. I will say the PAA has been a bit more limited for the virtual projects. In country, fellows tend to use the PA a lot more for books or items that they will leave with their host institution. So those are the main ways people are using PA right now. Great question. Yeah, PAA is very, most fellows like to use it as much as they can and try and use the full 250 at the end of their project.
So if you purchase something online, an online book or resource, then does the ultimate publication online stay with the RELO?
So it depends. So in country, yes, 100%. Any item that you purchase, you do donate to your host institution. Virtual assignments, we're doing slightly differently. If the item is over $100 and that's per cost of each item, yes, we will work with you to figure out how to donate this item to your host. It'd be either mailing the item to Georgetown and then we mail it, or maybe sending it to your RELO. If the item is under $100, you are not required to donate it and you may keep the item.
Okay, so I was just thinking about an online resource. It's an online textbook, nothing you can physically use.
No, so what we have seen some do, and it just depends on how that resource works, is they try and transfer ownership. So either changing the email address that you log in with so that your host or RELO can use this after you. Or if it's just depending on the subscription, if it's 1 month and it ends when your virtual fellowship is done, then it's done. If it's longer than that, then just it really depends. If you're able to transfer it, we'd like for you to, but we know that's not possible 100% of the time.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
I have a follow-up on the PAA. So the students I'm teaching are in the Congo, and there are 3 different campuses, and each campus, it's very difficult for me to audibly hear my students clearly. So an external microphone for all 3 campuses would be awesome. So would I order the microphones myself, send them to Georgetown, and then Georgetown would mail the microphones to each campus? Is that how it would work?
First, you would need your RELO approval for the item. So it'd be writing to your RELO and getting the RELO approval. And what we've had in other cases like this is trying to maybe work with whatever the online, like Amazon is there, or maybe if there's some other online company that you can ship through directly to the host institution. That's what we've been seeing the virtual fellows do. We haven't had anyone send it to themselves and then forward it on, just because shipping costs add up that way. You can use PA to pay for shipping, but usually they try and find a local company that can ship to the host institution, either via online or if they can maybe make the purchase over phone or something of that nature.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem. Hey, Marisol, do you have your hand up? I wasn't sure.
I do have another question. I don't know if I put my hand up. Did I? No.
So like a little, maybe that was my mouse.
That's okay. But I do have another question. So you talked about Zoom subscriptions. Does anybody use Google Meet or WhatsApp for their or are they discouraged, those two platforms?
It's not discouraged. It's really based on the host institution, what works best with that host, works best within that country, and for yourself and your students. Some countries, you can't use Google, so that wouldn't be an option.
Right.
So they choose Zoom over because Zoom seems to work in every country where we are sending the virtual fellows. As far as if they're using Google Meets or WhatsApp, I can open the floor to other virtual fellows to maybe answer that for you, but I do know some do use it. It just depends on what their needs are for their host and their project.
Thank you.
I do use WhatsApp with my group in Jordan and Google Meet too.
Thank you, Luma. Any other questions? Okay. If not, you can always write to your coordinator. Rachel, Lauren, and Emily are always happy to answer your questions. And if they don't have an answer for you, we will always find who to connect you to, who will be able to answer the question for you. So thank you for joining today, and I'm going to pass it back to Andrew.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you, everyone, for coming today. I hope this has been a good start to your week, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks' time. So have a good day and see you soon.
Thank you.